Raditz and 19 were staring each other down, the Saiyan panting and wiping away a spot of blood from his lip. Luckily, the two hadn't had any prolonged contact since the Raditz was a rather slippery fighter, and always found a way to avoid his opponent. Unlike 19, Raditz was rather creative, using ki blasts from his feet and even elbows to quickly zoom around the battlefield, though the towering buildings did present a problem. Many of them housed civilians, and while the Saiyan had no care for them personally, his time in the afterlife had given him a newfound respect for the living. Raditz would do his best not to injure anyone other than 19, though the android soon noticed this and began changing its attack patterns, intentionally aiming attacks at the nearby skyscrapers. Initially, Raditz could keep up, easily redirecting these attacks, but that only left him open. A stray eye laser managed to fly right through the Saiyan's side, and while it wasn't debilitating, the injury added to his fatigue. However, this did give him an idea, one which his crazy brother would likely cook up. Guess they weren't so different after all. Analyzing the weakened Z-Fighter, 19 decided now was the opportune time to use its final attack. It flew into the air, launching several key spheres towards another building while preparing to launch a charged up eye laser, one large enough to blow a hole right through Raditz's heart. But that's when he did something unexpected. Jumping in front of the building, grabbing every single ki blast and throwing it right back at the android. 19, being programmed to absorb any and all ki sent its way, stopped charging its attack and absorbed the oncoming ki. This only confirmed Rad's theory that its number one priority was absorbing energy, and so launched a double Sunday as a follow-up attack. 19 was all too happy to absorb this as well, knowing it only grow more powerful with each attack. The Saiyan used the bright flash of his attack, traveling in its shadow and right under the android's nose. Just as the double Sunday was absorbed, the Saiyan used both his legs to kick 19's hands up into the air. The droid is surprised at this strategy, but wasn't fazed as his opponent was now in melee range. However, that's when Raditz twisted his body midair, revealing a swirling ball of pink energy in his hands before thrusting it forward, making contact with the android's chest. This explosion left a large hole in 19, leaving them unable to move, though an expression of bewilderment and fear was left painted on its face. The Saiyan was about to finish his opponent when he felt Nappa's power skyrocketing, snapping him out of the fight and causing him to realize that Berter could no longer be sensed. Nearly a whole continent away, Nappa and Jace had just stumbled upon Gero's lab, with 19 standing over their friend's body. At first, the Saiyan expected his friend to jump up and retreat so they could fight together. In thinking the Snake Man was still alive, Nappa attacked 16, attempting to push the android back and allow Jace to recover their mate. 16 proved to be more than a match for Nappa though, analyzing the Saiyan while dodging every single attack, only to kick him away and launch a beam directly at Jace, fully intended to end him. Luckily, that's when Ginyu flew in, tanking the attack and staring down the droid. "Now it's 4 on 3. You should quit while you still can." Nappa dusted himself off before taking an offensive stance, noticing Berter still hadn't moved. "There are 3 hostiles. Odds of victory 90%. 17, 18. Form up on me." The droid didn't bother to look at the twins, but they were horrified. "What? You just killed someone. Sure, the old man deserves his treatment, and this guy kicked us, but he was hardly a threat. Not cool, man." 17 didn't move in either direction, simply staying right where he was, same as 18. This caused 16 to cite that they were under orders and must dispose of any and all intruders, to which 17 and 18 argue that they don't care about orders. While the three are arguing, Nappa is just looking at Berter. The Snake Man had been eager to get rid of this menace, and to return back to the house and just play some video games. He always bragged about being the fastest, promising to get this ordeal over as quickly as possible, and Nappa believed him. The Saiyan knew he couldn't keep up with Berter's speed and trusted that he could handle himself without backup, and this was the result. Jace also feels horrible. Sure, he had lost Raccoon and Guldo prior, but they weren't really his friends. Not like Berter. The two practically did everything together. The guy even got into baseball just so they could play a game occasionally. Berter was gonna be Jace's best man at his wedding. Both Nappa and the Red Magma raged out, the latter firing off a massive crusher ball, while Nappa screamed out, showing off an immense amount of power. The brute charged straight for 16, only to once again be shown just how big the gap between them was. For as powerful as the android was, he wasn't able to predict the wild moveset of Nappa now. When 16 had grabbed onto both his arms, the Saiyan opened his mouth, launching a point-blank break cannon that ultimately did nothing, only leaving a few small burn marks. The brute attempted to use a leg sweep to free himself from 16, but this also did nothing. The android was an immovable object, a wall that Nappa could never overcome, like so many before him. This disheartened the Saiyan, who powered down, only for 16 to knee him in the stomach, causing pain that melted his brain and took him right out of the fight. Once again, he had failed to defeat a key opponent, ultimately being nothing but a mere distraction. The android was about to finish the job when Ginyu of all people drew his attention. "Hey, Tin Can, yeah you, how about fighting a real man? That Saiyan over there may be powerful, but he has nothing on the might of the illustrious Captain Ginyu." The soldier struck his signature pose, fully expecting Jace to do the same, though he was far too concerned about Nappa to do a silly pose. Well, Ginyu didn't pay it any mind, instead squaring up and proceeding to get decimated by 16. While that went down, Jace recovered both Nappa and Berter, though they were pretty heavy, and the alien had a difficult time carrying his deceased friend. That's when someone reached a hand out towards Jace, that being Raditz, who was pretty banged up himself. He took Berter, knowing just how distressed the Red Magma was, and then flew off. The two then found a little mountain outcropping to leave their friends. While they thought of leaving Ginyu alone with 16, even Raditz had to admit the horned alien was trying to do good, even if it was only to fuel his own ego. The two couldn't just leave him alone. Besides, 17 and 18 were still there. Who knows what they would do? With the other Z-fighters still locked in combat with that blue troll doll, Raditz had no choice and had to pick up the slack. He summoned what little courage was left within his heart and flew back to Gero's lab. Back in the now destroyed city, Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, and Yamcha were all struggling to do anything to Super Android 13. His body was completely solid, tanking all damage thrown his way. This resulted in Goku attempting to use a Spirit Bomb, with Piccolo using his regeneration to stay in the fight and pick up the slack. Once the attack is completed, it's thrown at 13, who, surprisingly, is able to catch it. Since he's just a rage monster and is programmed to be this way, he technically isn't evil. He's not choosing it, he's just aligned with someone who happens to be evil. This means the droid can effectively combat this attack, requiring Goku to put his all into this tug of war with his own attack. However, while Yamcha and Gohan charge up Kamehamehas to help push the Genki Dama towards 13, Piccolo instead stays closer to the ground. He watches the droid struggling, the metal that made up his body turning a slightly lighter blue, then red, as he began to heat up. So, if there was sufficient power, then it could heat and soften his body, allowing for something to possibly pierce it? Well, the Namekian had the perfect move for that. Special Beam Cannon! A spiraling beam shot directly at 13's knee, drilling right into the joint. It took a few seconds, but it was able to fire through the leg, blowing it clean off, causing him to lose his grip on the Spirit Bomb and be blown off into the nearby ocean. Yamcha was excited about having defeated such a powerful opponent, even high-fiving Goku, only for Gohan to point out the damage to the city. Piccolo further mentioned the immense power of Nappa, which had just been snuffed out. Come on, Whatever's going on at Gero's lab can't be good. The damage here can be repaired with the Dragon Balls, but we have something more pressing on our hands. And just as the squad was about to fly off, that's when the two future warriors arrived. When hearing about this giant blue guy being defeated, they're pretty happy. However, when seeing 19's body, they were concerned, as no such droid existed in their timeline. Yeah, they should definitely find Gero's lab, ASAP. Back at said lab, 16 was still fighting Ginyu. However, he was attempting to find a permanent way of taking the captain out. He grabbed onto him and was attempting to shove him into an android pod, hoping the cryogenic storage system would preserve this intriguing specimen, just as Raditz and Jace arrived. The two demanded 16 stop at once, and that the android surrender and just leave peacefully. But we all know 16's answer to that. He successfully put Ginyu into the cryopod, a needle sticking into the captain unbeknownst to everyone else. However, 17 and 18 end up accepting this ultimatum. Yeah, I'm not too happy about being forced to work for the old man, or a murderer. I'm sticking with the pineapple-haired guy, at least he cares about his friends. 17 begins to walk out when 16 grabs him by the bandana. The penalty for desertion is deactivation. Think carefully about what you're about to do, 17. You are still required for the doctor's plans. The droid stared down with an intense glare, despite having no emotions. The twins could feel an ominous aura come over them. Hey, we don't take kindly to threats. If you're threatening my brother, you'll have to fight me too. The twins squared up, and for the third time today, 16 would have to teach someone a lesson. Now, Raditz considered stepping in, but he also had to rescue Ginyu, and so chose to do that first. He tried running towards 16's pod, which was on the other side of the cave, but a skeletal hand reached out, grabbing the Saiyan by his shoulder and stopping him. From the shadows, 3 more androids appeared, though their bodies were nowhere near as well preserved. One was a short man, somewhat resembling Commander Red, one a tall, bald man resembling Officer Black, and the final one looking like Commander Blue. All 3 had skin as pale as paper, with it stretched over semi-exposed bone. Clearly, these models were never meant to see the light of day. This proved the Doctor was desperate, sending everything he had at the Z-fighters. Raditz, being the overconfident Saiyan he was, decided to fight these 3 without any backup, and to his surprise, they were incredibly powerful. Their strength was enough to make the Saiyan a little nervous, especially after being so fatigued, but Jace jumps in, and with some effort, they're able to defeat all 3 droids, and then they feel the cold steel of 16's hand on both of their heads. The droid slams the 2 together, causing them to pass out, just as he did with 17 and 18. Good, 16. You've successfully subdued the threat. Now, come into the sub-lab and help me with evacuations. What about androids 17 and 18? 16 looked towards the twins, thinking it'd be a waste to lose such valuable subjects. Leave them be, leave them be. More enemies are on the move. We don't have much time. And so, 16 disappeared into the sub-lab. Moments later, Yamcha and company arrive, and well, everyone chooses to focus on different aspects of this giant mess. The bandit rushes over to wake up Raditz and Jace, while Goku inspects the 3 zombie androids. But Piccolo and Gohan immediately dial in on the twins. The Saiyan has half a mind to destroy them, and Piccolo does as well, but he tempers the children. The female future warrior walks up to them, her face covered in shadow, the same thoughts likely crossing her mind as well. You'll hate me for this, but we have to capture them. What? You know what they do in the future? What they'll do here? We have to take them out while we can! The boy struggled to get past Piccolo, eventually slipping through when he used Kaioken. Trunks unsheaths his sword, aiming right for 18, but his counterpart powers up into Super Saiyan and blocks the blade with her forearm. I said no. Gohan entrusted me with this mission. Now stand down. The two have a brief struggle, with Trunks pushing his sword forward, only stopping when he notices blood trickling from the girl's forearm. Ch, fine. But if they give me any reason, and I mean any reason to cut them down, I won't hesitate. The two went to tie up the twins, but their little scuffle had woken up the pair, who were now up and scanning the room. They had an idea of who everyone is, aside from the future warriors, but when spotting Goku, a wicked smile appeared on their faces. 17 asks Goku if he wants to fight, something the Saiyan happily agrees to, but not now, since they need to find Gero. Well, 18 pushes the issue, saying there's this little itch they have, something telling them to kill Son Goku. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, the tension so thick you could cut it like space butter. Goku tells the others to keep investigating, asking the androids to step outside. The Z-Fighters couldn't believe this, especially Gohan, who stressed just how important it was that they stop Gero. But there's no stopping Goku when a good fight presents itself, and Piccolo offers to join in as well, making it even. This leaves the future warriors, Gohan and Yamcha, to search the lab, something the bandit isn't exactly happy about. He wanted to fight too, though maybe this Gero guy would have some ultra powerful secret android somewhere. Yeah, he'd find an even stronger android and defeat them. That'd show he's clearly the strongest of the Z-Fighters. By this point, Ginyu had been freed from 16's pod, though they all failed to notice that some of his DNA had been taken. Deep within the sublab, just before Gero disconnected 21's growth tank, the supercomputer added one last set of genetics to the embryo, and before anyone could notice, the time span it'd normally take for this embryo to gestate was shortened significantly. But that's where we'll be leaving things off for right now. If you guys enjoyed this part, maybe you'd like a story all about a certain Bugman changing the timeline for his own benefit. But even if you don't, thanks for getting to this part of the video. You guys have a good day or night wherever you are. That's it for now. Bye bye.